Well, Jack Murta, a name that a lot of you will recall, was a member of Parliament for 18 years. He was a member of the Mulroney government. He was the first ever Minister of Multicultural Affairs.
That's right.
Multicultural Affairs. He is the leader of the weekly parliamentary prayer breakfast in Ottawa. He also is a key player in the national prayer breakfast, which some of you may be attending or thinking of attending. We'll give you more information about that. But he's a man of many accomplishments. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, John.
The Honourable Jack, meaning you're a member of the Privy Council as well, or were when you were in Parliament.
I was, yeah, that's right.
But your little badge there gives you a lot of freedom in the House even to this day.
It does, and it's great for what I do because I can go what they call behind the curtain, which means you can go into the side areas where the members sit and talk and strategize, et cetera, from all parties. So you can go in there and sit and talk with them and get better acquainted with many of them that way. So it allows me to sort of, as I move around through the House of Commons on not a daily basis, but I'm probably there 2 days a week or so. It allows me the freedom, I guess, to kind of come and go wherever I want, except I can't go on the floor of the House of Commons, of course.
Do you miss it?
Not at all.
The floor?
Not at all. No, I left in 1988, because I wanted to leave. So it's one of those things you leave for two reasons: one, you want to, or one, because you've been asked to go by your voters.
Right.
I was lucky enough to decide that I wanted to go at 88. I was going to leave in 84, and then Prime Minister Mulroney appeared to be. There's no question, at least in my mind, that he was going to be the next Prime Minister. And I'd been in opposition for a long time, since 1970, because I came in a by-election. So I thought, well, I'll give it one more time, see what happens. And I was, after the 4 years I was ready to leave, I found that all the things that I guess I had thought of about being in the cabinet over the years maybe weren't quite as great as I had thought. It's like waiting for Christmas morning, and when it comes, is that all there is, kind of thing, you know, is there not any more? And so I was ready to leave in 88, and I went back to Manitoba at that time.
How tough is it when you go into politics, especially as a rookie? You were just about 27 when you first went in.
I was, yeah.
But when you get into the caucus and then eventually become a cabinet minister, as is the case for not all, but some MPs, do you live with a kind of a dynamic tension between what you think needs to be done, your vision for the issues at hand, and the need to vote the party line?
You always do that. In our system, that's the way it operates, and it can be very difficult. At times, it's more difficult than others. Now, I was lucky in my own particular area because it was agricultural. It was rural Manitoba, agricultural based. The party, the Progressive Conservative Party at that time, were pretty much in lockstep with the thinking of many of the people in my constituency. And although I had never been politically active at all before I got elected, it was a natural way for me to sort of go into that particular riding. And I didn't have any great problems with decisions up to that point. But there's always that dynamic tension. And unfortunately, in our system, because it's the party discipline is so strong, that many people tend to, not as bad now, although it's just about as bad, but many people tend to sort of forego their own principles to be part of the group.
Okay, and if you choose not to forego your own principles, but to vote your heart, what discipline is exerted?
A lot. You can be you can be not so much ostracized by your colleagues, because they understand it, everybody, all the MPs, but the leadership within the party, the hierarchy. If you've got a position of some substance within the party, you may lose that. There can be problems. It was never the case when I was there. We could vote against the party from time to time and not worry about being re-elected. Now there's even a sense that if you step out of line too far, the party apparatus will tap you on the shoulder and say, "I'm sorry, but we're going to find somebody else to run, and you can run as an independent if that's the way you think." And so those kind of disciplines are quite strong, and they keep. That's how a prime minister or a leader, not the prime minister, because it happens in all parties. That's how the leader really can maintain control with that kind of discipline. Now we've tried to move away from that with more independence within the committee system and everything else in the last few years. And my sense is that the parties have given more lip service to that than it's actually happening. But there are some committees now that are led by the opposition members, and those committees seem to be more independent and work better. I think they work better than so many of the other committees that are led by the government members.
Now, when we talk about the government, is it not true that the government really, as far as the members on the Hill are concerned, the government is the Prime Minister and the Cabinet?
That
is the government.
That is the government.
If you're a backbencher, you're not really a part of the government.
Not really. No, you're there. You're there to give speeches when you think it's advantageous for you because of your constituents. You'll reflect maybe a feeling of what they have for a particular issue, and to stand up and vote when you're required to. But it's really the sort of one for all and all for one kind of aspect of politics. But the cabinet is there, and then within the cabinet themselves is a series of different levels. You've got your more senior ministers that chair cabinet committees that are really, that's where a lot of the work gets done, and so there's a hierarchy even within the cabinet itself, and the idea is that everyone's treated equal is a bit of a fallacy in many cases, because that's not the case, and it's not the case in very much of anything really. So I guess it shouldn't be any surprise that in politics.
So would an MP who never makes the cabinet feel that he or she had somehow failed?
Not really. I knew a lot of MPs that they didn't want to make the cabinet. They were there to serve their constituents, and in fact, when you see a change take place, as we've seen in the past, a major change, they're usually the MPs that stay around. Why? Because they're able to tap in and talk to their constituents. Their constituents, like there's an old saying, and it is so true, that politics is all local. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about foreign affairs or nuclear issues, it's all local. And it's the politicians that look after the local issues in their riding. They're the ones that are going to stay around for the long haul.
And over the long term are going to have, just by dint of their constant presence, a real impact.
That's right, exactly, yeah. It won't be maybe the perceived star quality that we think of, but it'll be as meaning in the longer term than anything that a senior cabinet minister can do in the short term.
Yeah. Was Leslie Knowles a part of the cabinet at one point?
No.
No, but he was there forever and became sort of the...
He was there forever. He was a wonderful man.
He was like the ad hoc parliamentarian.
That's right.
He knew all the rules. Everybody respected him.
That's right.
And he really contributed to the DNA of the integrity of the Canadian Parliament for so many years.
Very much so, yeah. And people looked to him. People looked to him for advice and mentoring. I know I did this. I did the same thing, so everybody did that.
Very impressive. I want to talk about the National Prayer Breakfast in a moment, but first of all, we're going into an election. I'm not asking for predictions. No. What's your sense, though, of the mood of the country?
Well, unfortunately, I think up to this point, the election has been pretty boring. Yeah. There isn't very much, nothing looks like it's going to be, there won't be much of a change. Having said that, the last two and a half weeks of a campaign is moving day, as they say. That's when the voters that are undecided may move to one party or another. So we could see something happen over the course of the next few days, the next week or so. But right now, that's not the case. And my worry right now is, frankly, that we're going to see a low turnout. Just because there's no big issues, same old, it looks like another conservative minority government, although that still could be in play, but it would be hard to think of something else taking place. There'd have to be a major collapse on the part of the Conservatives at this time, I think, anyway, to see that. So if that's the case, we're going to see, we could see the vote down into the high 50s or so, and that's not good. And the other thing is that where it's really worrisome is the young people. Those young people that are voting, first and second time voters, they could just not walk away or not be part of it at all, and that's troubling because I think that's where we've got to focus. I know the Elections Canada group are looking at that, and I was executive director of the former parliamentarians at one point. We were looking at that also. How do we get to these people? And but you know, if you look at the issues and if you look at it from the point of view of the last American election, there was a low voter turnout with the young people, except when Obama got involved. With all the kind of technology he used, and then there was a huge number of young people got involved. So we guess we just have to appeal to them differently. Yeah. That's but that's a worry. That's a problem.
Sure, it is definitely a new era. Now, tell me about the the prayer breakfast. First of all, you have a weekly parliamentary prayer breakfast, which you lead.
That's right. Well, I make sure it happens.
You make sure it happens.
Yeah.
Which I think is a surprise for a lot of viewers. But there are a lot of members of Parliament of all parties who really love the Lord and get together without rancor,
right. That's right.
without issues to divide, and they just pray together and bond.
That's right.